بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد بن عبد الله
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجاس وطهرهم من الأدناس وجعل مودتهم أجرا على الناس ولا سيما على بقية الله في الأرضين الإمام المنتظر صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ابن هداة المهديين وعلى صحبهم الأخيار المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والمجاهدين في سبيل الله منذ آدم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، روي عن أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام أنه قال عن الله عز وجل أنه لم يعص مغلوبا ولم يطع مكرها ولم يملك مفوضا. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
As we've gathered here on the date which is marked to celebrate the birth of our 10th Holy Imam alayhi salam, Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salam.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Even though some of the riwayat mention his birth date to be on the 5th of Rajab, but most of the riwayat indicate towards these days around the 15th of Dhul Hijjah. When his father passed away, he was at the age of 5 or 6 years old, or even 7 years old, according to how the history has been narrated. At that tender age, having inherited or having been given the office of Imamah, he was at the time of the Abbasid era when theological issues were under heavy discussion. People were speaking about the eternity or the eternal essence of the Quran, whether it was eternal or not, or whether it was confined, or whether it was really the word of God, or what God was in reality. What about, people were saying this and saying this and saying this, and therefore kalam or speech about theology, about these theological matters was rife at that time, and so ilmul kalam developed, or the science of theology, or the science of all of these discussions. And within that time was the discussion of whether or not we have the free will to do what we do. Although this discussion didn't start at the time of our Holy Imam, Imam alayhi salam, it started much before then. But it was not resolved until today amongst the Sunni schools of thought, and the Shia schools of thought has not been satisfactorily resolved. So this was there from the very beginning of Islam, about the discussion with regards to man having a choice over his own actions. And therefore I have chosen this discussion for today, if at all I have chosen it, or whether it was picked for me. In any case, this issue has not been dealt with satisfactorily. The issue about our actions, man's action. Who is the doer of the action? That action which emanates from man, that deed, who is the perpetrator of that? Who is the committer of that deed? So we have several opinions in Islam, and just to set out at the onset, the discussion today will be with regards to what the scholars of Islam have discussed, and not outside of that, although Western scholars and philosophers have also had their own input and contribution, non-Muslim scholars and philosophers. So one, the action that I do, is it only me doing it and Allah has no part to play? Or two, is it only Allah who is causing that action and I have no part to play? Or is it neither of those two and another opinion altogether? And we'll come on to these in the few minutes we have. But this is not, we said this is not a discussion which was confined at the time of the Holy 10th Imam alayhi salam in Islam. No, but it was not a discussion that was restricted to the Islamic fold alone. We have from Fakhr Razi saying this issue was so widely discussed and it was so troublesome to man is اعلم أن حال هذه المسألة حال عجيبة. The issue or the state of this issue, this matter, is something very strange. Why? وذلك لأن الخلق كانوا أبدا مختلفين فيها. Mankind has not during the time of Islam or during the discussions of Greek philosophers or in Christianity. No. Mankind as a whole has always been perplexed and in disagreement with regards to this issue. So it's not just to do with Muslims. So within Islam, what camps do we have? Or what schools of thought do we have? We have two main schools of thought with regards to the theological schools of the Ahlul Sunnah. One, the Ash'ari school, or with regards to this discussion, the Jabariya school, that Allah is the one who creates the deeds and actions of man. So what part does man play therefore? No, man has no part to play except that he is the receptacle or the place where Allah does his deeds. Allah does create the action. Allah does everything. Man is just the recipient, just the one who inherits, or just the place where Allah does it, just the receptacle of Allah's doing. As opposed to the second school, the Mu'tazili school, or in this discussion, the school of Al-Mufawwida. Mufawwida meaning empowerment. That Allah has empowered. Allah completely delegates all that power of action, of doing, of speaking, of raising, of lowering, of every action, standing and sitting and laughing. All of that is man. Allah has given man the power. Now you do what you want, and Allah has no part to play whatsoever. Man only acts like this independently. Before we go on to discuss how and why and what, it's important for us to realize or understand why at all this discussion is important. Why should we be discussing this? Why is it important for me to understand whether I do the actions or it is Allah who is doing the actions, I'm just the receptacle, or I'm completely independent of Allah? One, I'm worshipping this Allah. This Allah or this entity that I'm worshipping, is he just or is he unjust? If he is unjust, why should I worship such an oppressor, a tyrant? Why should I? He shouldn't be deserving of worship if he is like this. So is he just or unjust? Two, is he all powerful? Is he omnipotent or is his power limited? If his power is limited and he has limited power, he is confined. I too have limited power. Why should I obey him? So the first one, is he just or unjust? If he creates the deeds that I perform, and then he punishes me for them, is that justice or injustice? So why should I worship him if he's like this, if this is really the case? Or if it is me who creates the deed, independent of Allah, if it is me who can originate my own actions, then why should I worship Allah? If I am independent of him. Even those people who say that action comes from man alone, Al-Mufawwida school, the second school of the Ahlul Sunnah, that the deeds come from man alone, independent of Allah. Yes, they understand that Allah has given the power. Allah gives me the ability. Allah gives me the power. Allah gives me the capacity. They agreed on this. But at the time of committing the deed, it is me who does it. When I raise my hand to strike someone, yes, Allah has given me the power, given me the hand, given me the ability to think, to plan. But when I raise to strike, it is me who is doing it. I don't need Allah at that point. Or even at that point. Even whilst I raise my hand, yes, He's giving the power. At that time. So not He's given the power and He's left me to do all that. No. He's still sustaining me at that time and giving me the power and allowing me to exist, but the action is me who is doing it, not Allah. And if He does this much, gives me, sustains me, provides me, allows me to exist, and then I do the action, so we are, at some point, His authority is stopping, and mine is starting. So He is not all powerful. If He delegates the power to me, That means his power stops somewhere and mine starts somewhere. So it's important to realize and understand that we should know where these thoughts are coming from, why they are important. So why this difference in opinion? Where do these differences in opinion come from? Definitely it's how not one understands deeds, actions, man, creation, no. Primarily it's about how one understands Allah. How does one understand Allah? The Al-Jabriya school, the Ash'ari school, who have the opinion that Allah creates all the actions. They understand Allah to be Al-Khaliq. One of the 19 names of Allah is Al-Khaliq. He is the creator. So He is the creator. How dare one say that I too can create? No, creator is only Allah. If I say I do my actions, that means I am the creator of the actions. How dare you say such a thing? Allah is the creator, Al-Khaliq. Allah is Malikul Mulk. Malik means what? The owner, the possessor, the sovereign owner of the dominion of Allah. If I play some part without Allah, that means He's not the sole owner. And remember, when you speak about this name, Al-Malik, Malik, yes, means owner, possessor. But Malik, we should realize, is not the same way we understand each other to be Malik. Malik means owner. So we are also Malik sometimes of some things, right? But when Allah is Malik, He is not Malik the way we are Malik. Our ownership, is it real or... Who here is not renting but is Malik of their own house? Can I have a show of hands, please? Who is Malik of their house? Maybe some people are shy or they're all living in rent. Yes?
Actually, I'm on the IC.
The one, is it lease or is it freehold, Miqdad, your house? Freehold. You are the Malik of your... What makes you the Malik? Exactly. Just the fact that you have some title deed which says your name on it, and if, na'udhu billah, there was a court order and some judge signed it and it's repossessed, stamped, what happens to your being Malik? Doesn't mean anything. But I pay, no one cares. I'm paying the mortgage, nobody cares. It's all about a piece of paper someone else signs and that's your being Malik. So even your being Malik is just superficial, it's not something real. Where Allah being Malik is real, there's no one to sign a paper and say, Allah, this is your dominion, this is not your... No, Allah is Malik. Malikul Mulk, not like Malik of a house that we have, someone can take it from you, someone can give it to you. This is not real sense of... Okay, even if you are Malik, even within this superficial understanding of being Malik, you are Malik. Let's say you are Malik. The judge signed you are Malik. Is your milkiyah or your owning of that restricted, or I'm now Malik, it's unrestricted? Even if it's your house and your property, your garden, the land is yours. Everyone agrees with you, you have to sign, the paper signed is yours. And you go to the shop and B&Q and everywhere, and you buy cement and you buy bricks. Can you build a 3-story structure in your back garden? It's your garden. It's your bricks. As soon as you try to do that, suddenly you don't have planning permission. I'm the Malik. No. Even if first your milkiyah is superficial, not even real. Someone signs a paper, that means you're Malik. Allah's milkiyah is not like that. Second, even within that superficial ownership, it's restricted. A man buys a donkey with his money and he purchases the donkey. Whose donkey is it? It is mine, he says. Can you load it? Yes, I can load it. Can you ride it? Yes, I can ride it. It's mine. Can you set it alight and burn it? Straight away the RSPCA is there and this one is there. You can't. You don't have unrestricted ownership. Even first, ownership is superficial, one. 2, that ownership is restricted. Whereas Allah being Malik is not like this. Neither is His ownership, 1, superficial, nor is it restricted. So we said the donkey, if someone can ride it, load it, that's fair enough. But as soon as they try to set it alight or starve it to death, this is not allowed and they will be stopped from doing that. The authorities will, but it's mine. But if we say Allah being Malik is not like this, this is where Al-Jabariyya says, no, He's Malikul Mulk. So if a pious person, he wants to burn him in the hellfire, you can't tell him, what are you doing? You can't do this. Allah is Malik, not like you being Malik that RSP say he will stop you. No, Allah is Malik, you cannot question him. So Allah is Malik there. So do they have a point then? Allah can burn whoever he wants in the hellfire if he's really Malik. And if everything belongs to how many? Lahu mulku samawati wal ard. Everything is in his hands. The samawat and earth, he has ownership of it. Huwa malikul mulk. So then, what are we reciting if we don't really believe it? Are they right then? That Allah can do as He wishes. So now they have a point. On the other side, the Al-Mufawwidha school, or school of thought in this case, say no. Remember, Allah is Al-Adl. Allah is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. And He is just also. Therefore, He cannot burn in the hellfire someone who is innocent. And remember, again, Malik, we said Allah is different from us being Malik. Al-Adl is different from us being just. How? If I say person X, brother this is just, or sister this is just, what does that mean? That means they have a tendency to be just in their, or fair in their judgments. Is that person able to be unjust? Yes or no? If they wanted to, can they be unjust? Yes. But they choose not to be. But Allah, the argument is here that justice is part of His essence. You can't say Allah can be unjust if He wishes, but He would never do it. No. If justice is part of your essence, if you take away justice, you cease being Allah. If justice is essential, He cannot be unjust. And on top of that, then we have verses from the Quran. In chapter 3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. This is whatever punishment there is or whatever wrath befalls on the people. This is what your own hands have sent forth. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. Allah is not even the slight bit oppressive on the slaves. So just this discussion about what's right then. Is Allah really Malikul Mulk? Or is He Al-Adl? Or are they in conflict? Or which name is greater and which name should prioritize over other names? This whole discussion actually, you can see in Islam how you can't put jurisprudence to one side because what is wajib, what is haram is part of this discussion. Should something be wajib, should something be haram is part of this discussion. Theology is part of this discussion. Justice is part of this discussion. Arafan and mysticism is part of this discussion. Because which names of Allah have precedence over which names is a mystical discussion. So in this discussion, so we discussed Al-Mufawwidha, Al-Jabariyya. Where does the Imami school sit on this? Al-Allam Al-Majlisi, in volume 4 of his compendium of Al-Bihar, says in that وَذَهَبَتِ الْإِمَامِيَّةُ وَالْمُعْتَزِلَةُ إِلَىٰ أَنَّ أَفْعَالَ الْعِبَادِ وَحَرَكَاتِهِمْ وَاقِعَةٌ. That means this, Allama is saying that Imamiyya and Mu'tazila have that opinion that all the deeds of man, all the movements of man take place, how? بِقُدْرَتِهِمْ وَاخْتِيَارِهِمْ, by their own power and by their own choice. فَهُمْ خَالِقُونَ لَهَا. They are the ones who created. Actually, to say such a thing in this way would not be wholly accurate. That the Imamiyya, meaning the Shia school, and the Mu'tazila school fall in the same category. They don't fall in the same category. Because the Mu'tazila say that whilst they do say that man creates his own deeds, they say man is completely independent of Allah. Allah has left him to commit his own deeds. Whereby the Shia don't have the similar opinion. So it's quite simplistic to put them all in one boat and say Mu'tazila or the Mufawwidha and Imamiyya are in one boat with regards to this. Because they say what? Allah has no part to play. Allah has given man or delegated to man, empowered man. Allah is not then involved. where the Shia don't have this opinion. So it's Al-Jabariyya are accusing Al-Mufawwidha. What are they accusing them of? You are going against the absolute sovereignty of Allah if you say man has any part to play in his own deeds. Mu'tazila or Mufawwidha are attacking Al-Jabariyya. You are going against Allah's justice if you claim that Allah would really create the deeds for man and then just dump them on him and then punish him afterwards for that. So Al-Mufawwidha are against sovereignty. Al-Jabariyya are against justice. So where does the Shia school stand then? We have some hints from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam and from the ahadith with regards to this. After the Battle of Siffin against Muawiyah and his forces, a man, an elderly man, who was fighting with Amir al-Mu'minin on the side of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, asked Imam Ali alayhi salam with regards to his reward. He said, will we be rewarded for this? We marched before, will we be rewarded? Imam alayhi salam said, yes. He said, how can we be rewarded? Was it not Allah who made us go forth? Was it not Allah who created us or created our action of marching forth and fighting? If so, how can we be rewarded for this? And Imam said, yes, you will be rewarded. And this is when Imam alayhi salam said the words with regard to Allah that we mentioned at the beginning of this discourse. He said about Allah, Lam yu'sa maghluban. If he is disobeyed, he is not disobeyed because he is helpless to do anything about it and people have the autonomy to disobey him. وَلَمْ يُطَعْ مُكْرِهًا. Even when he is obeyed, it is not the case that Allah compels and forces people to obey him and therefore they are obeying him. Well, so he's not disobeyed helplessly. Okay, that means he can't just delegate to man, empower man to do everything. Then he will be disobeyed and he will be helpless to do anything. And he is not disobeyed helplessly. He is not obeyed forcibly. So he doesn't create the action and just dump it on man. وَلَمْ يُمَلِّكْ مُفَوِّضًا. And he does not designate people with his power and his sovereignty. He does not give them his power. He does not divest his authority to them. This is strange. So what do we understand then? We want to know what Allah does. Imam is telling us everything Allah doesn't do. And he's negating everything. Then what else is left for us? He is not powerless and giving power to man only. He is not forcing and playing a part in that. And he is not divesting his power. We also have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, our sixth holy Imam. A man came to Imam and asked him, أَجَبَرَ اللَّهُ لِعِبَادَ عَلَى الْمَعَاصِي. Is it the case that Allah forces man to disobey and commit disobedience? Imam replied, La, no. So he asked him, so does he designate the issue to them and they act as they wish? Empowers them and they act as they wish, then he has washed his hands then? Imam replied, no. The man said, he's reporting now, he said, فَقُلْتُ فَمَاذَا? He's not this and not this. Then what is the issue? What then? Imam replied, لُطْفٌ مِّن رَبِّكْ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ. It is a subtle grace of your Lord that it is something between these two. So that should explain it then. Another hadith again from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, not this or not that, وَلَكِنْ مَنْزِلَةٌ بَيْنَهُمَا. It is not this way, it is not that way, but it is a manzila, a station between those two. فِيهَا الْحَقُّ الَّتِي بَيْنَهُمَا لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُ. The truth lies in that thing and nobody knows that except the real scholar, the real alim would know, except that nobody knows. Another hadith we have is something between those two, and that station between those two is as vast as the heaven and the earth. So Al-Jabariyya, Sunni school of thought say, and that's the majority of Sunni theologians now, today, that Allah does everything, Allah is sovereign, man is just a receiving vessel of Allah. The other side, no, man does everything. Allah has no part to play, otherwise it would be unjust. So then the Shia say, and now, so we know the famous phrase has come about from a hadith like this, Al-amru bayna amrayn. Yeah? So it's solved. One side said this, the Shia say, no, amr bayna amrayn. Solved. Not solved. That's just the beginning of the problem. As a Muslim Shia who is supposed to ascribe and endorse this theology, it's not this, which would be easy to understand, although repugnant that Allah forces His slaves to do things and then punishes them. Easy to understand, but not acceptable. And this would be easy to understand, that He gives the authority to man and man does what he wishes. And easy to understand, but not acceptable, because then I am partner with Allah in doing my deeds. I'm independent of Allah, not acceptable. That's easy to understand. This is easy to. This is. What does it mean? So it's not this, it's not this. So how can it be? That's the beginning of the problem, not the end of the problem. What does it mean? Al-amru bayna amrayn. So the Shia scholars try to come up with an answer for this. That Allah, is it the case that amr bayna amrayn, so Allah does something and I do something? So it's part Allah doing it and part me doing it. Allah is Allah, He does His bit, I do my bit. In that case, when I lift up my hand, how much of that is Allah and how much is me? If I kill someone with my hand, surely Allah, if He does 1/5 or 3/5 or 1/2 of the action, He should be punished half. I should only be punished half. Why am I getting the full punishment then? What part is His and what part is mine? On top of that, if that wasn't troublesome enough, you have verses of the Quran. Ibrahim alayhi salam is asking his people, why are you worshipping these idols? Do you worship that which you have carved with your own hands? Ibrahim tells the people. Whilst Allah, Wallahu khalaqakum, whilst Allah has created you, wama ta'malun, and He has created what you do. So Allah must be creating what we do then. Ibrahim is saying it's in the Quran. So why is He not punished for it? Why am I punished fully? It doesn't make sense. Al-amr bayna amrayn cannot mean this therefore. And this doesn't make sense anyway. Why? Because if Allah does 3/5 of the action, or 1/5 of the action, and I do the other portion of the action, that means Allah's authority is stopping somewhere, mine is starting somewhere. I am mushrik, in a way, because I'm ascribing my own partnership with Allah in His kingdom. Allah does, and I do as well. Okay, I do 1/5, He does 3/5 or 4/5, or the other way around. But He does, and I do. This is not acceptable. Imam Ali alayhi salam was passing by a place in Kufa when he heard a man discussing this. So someone was asking the man, so how do you, are you able to do things? So the man said, Naam astati'. Yes, I am able. I am able to do it. Imam asked him, are you able to do it? He said, yes. He said, when you do it, is it along with Allah like this one? Is it along with Allah that you are performing the thing? So Allah does a bit, you do a bit. Is it along with Allah? Or is it independent of Allah? You don't need Him and you're doing it. The man stuck. Imam asked him, after he told him this, he said, وَإِن زَعَمْتَ أَنَّكَ مَعَ اللَّهِ تَسْتَطِيعُ. If you claim it is alongside Allah that you are doing it, فَقَدْ زَعَمْتَ أَنَّكَ شَرِيكٌ مَعَهُ فِي مُلْكِهِ. Then you claim, you allege that you are His partner in His kingdom. I am doing it and Allah does half, I'm doing the other half. Imam alayhi salam told him, if you claim this, مَعَ اللَّهِ تَسْتَطِيعُ, if you are able alongside Allah, you are mushrik. Because you are doing something Allah. وَإِن زَعَمْتَ أَنَّكَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ تَسْتَطِيعُ. And if you claim or allege that it is independent or without Allah that you are able, فَقَدْ إِدَّعَيْتَ رُبُوبِيَّ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Then you are claiming lordship independent from Allah. If you claim you're doing it with Allah, you're mushrik. If you're claiming you're doing it away from Allah, then you are independent of him. You're also saying you have lordship in his kingdom. What do you? The man thought and he replied, he didn't know what to reply. So not ma'allah, alongside Allah. Not min dunillah. Now what does he say? The man replied to Imam, billah astati'. Not ma'allah, not along with Allah. Not min dunillah, independent of Allah. He said, billah astati'. He said, not with Allah and not without Allah, by Allah. He said, by Allah, I am able, according to this hadith and according to, well, subject to its authority, Imam alayhi salam went on to tell him, if you had replied any of the other two, I would have chopped your head now. If you said, ma'allah, you are mushrik. If you said, min dunillah, you are Allah, and Allah is Allah, because you are, along with him, a Rabb. He said, billah astati. He said, if you had replied any other way, I would have chopped your head. So with Allah, the man said, billah astati. Not with Allah, not without Allah, by Allah. Still, what does that mean? By Allah, still, what does that mean? So we have the opinion of a hierarchical relationship between us and Allah. And Allah gives existence. So not He gave existence, no. He gives existence now. So as I lift this piece of plastic from the table, He is allowing me to exist continuously now, renewing my existence, continuously giving me the power, the will, the ability, the strength, and He can cease to provide it any time He wishes. So He's continuously giving that, and I perform the deed. Actually, Ayatollah Ja'far Subhani, one of our contemporary theologians, and one of the more prominent ones, is of this kind of opinion. So he gives the analogy also, and I believe he is also reiterating and regurgitating Ayatollah Khoei's opinion and idea. He gives the analogy. He said, imagine a paralyzed arm, a man with a paralyzed hand. And then you attach electrical cables to the hand, which would allow the hand to move. So he's saying Allah attaches, if you like, attaches those, gives that power. And Allah continuously is giving that power. Then man picks up the sword, if you like, and can strike someone dead. But it's Allah who is giving the power. So in that way, Allah is doing, so it is by Allah that this man is doing. Is that acceptable, this opinion? Actually, philosophers have said, no, this is not acceptable. Why? Because we already agreed. Mu'tazila have already said that Allah gives the power and gives the... Okay, they said He gives the power, then He leaves man to do what he wants. We are saying, no, He continuously gives the power now. Fine. But al-amr bayna amrayn, or the matter of doing the action which is being this, between this and this, it is not saying that Allah gives the power and continuously gives existence and then man does the action. That Allah is al-fa'il al-ba'id, and man is al-fa'il al-qareeb, the immediate actor, and Allah is the remote actor. No. Because this still means that Allah is giving the power continuously, but when it comes to doing the deed, yes, He's giving the power. And He can see He's giving the power if He wishes. But I'm doing the deed. We're still saying that Allah's role in my action stops somewhere and mine starts somewhere. So even this theological idea is not acceptable. Do you understand? That if we say Allah gives the power, not gives the power, is giving the power now, and the ability, and the existence, and the ability to think, and will. But when it comes to doing the action, I'm doing it completely from my free will. That means Allah is playing a role to an extent, and I am playing a role to an extent. That means ma'allah astati'. With Allah I am able. So although this theologian has tried to explain billah astati', he is still going back to ma'allah astati'. It may be the vast majority of it, and I'm just doing a little bit which is picking up, but I'm still doing from my free will. The last opinion is given by the mystics. Not the so theologians, still we don't have an answer. The mystics give an answer. Do they give a satisfactory answer? That Ibn Arabi's theories, which were again, if you like, regurgitated by Mullah Sadra, and because Mullah Sadra said them, we endorse them. If Ibn Arabi said them, we don't like them. But it's the same thing. Mullah Sadra goes from Ibn Arabi. All this whole thing of wahdatul wujud and the oneness of existence means that Allah and existence and man cannot be separated. If you like the analogy of the ocean and the waves, are the waves separate from the ocean? No. The waves are the ocean also. So man in that way is not separate from Allah, because then you would be confining Allah to there and I am here. You can't say that. So Allah, man, existence is all one full existence. So in that case, Allah is not al-fa'il al-ba'id and man being al-fa'il al-qareeb, the remote actor and man being the immediate actor, because everything is one. So Allah is also the immediate actor and man is also the immediate actor. Yes, somehow conceptually this seems to answer it somehow. Does it answer the question about why am I punished if I sin? Then no. So the conclusion for tonight's discussion is, as Miqdad said in the title, the yet unsolved mystery. We know it cannot be that Allah makes me do and creates the action then punishes me. That goes against His justice. It cannot be that He allows me to do something independently, because then I am part of His Lord in His kingdom also. Al-amr bayna amrayn cannot mean that He does part of the action and I do part of the action, because Imam Ali alayhi salam has also already said, if you say ma'allah astati', with Allah, alongside Allah, I am able, you are mushrik. Yes, the answer can be, according to that hadith anyway, billah astati', by Allah I am able. What does that mean exactly? We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us, forget answering this mystery first, but allows us to realize how feeble and insignificant and limited our minds are in trying to understand Him and His actions and His being, which indeed we will not understand His being obviously to His fullest extent, but even this, which may seem like a small issue, we don't understand. We just don't understand, and intellects will not comprehend Him. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the humbleness to realize our own limitations. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
We have some time for any questions if there are any from either side.
Or more theories.
I'm left more confused. Basically, how does one realize that he's acting, whether the person is mushrik or not mushrik? Because you may be thinking all the time, I'm doing the will by Allah. So how does one resolve that?
Yeah, this is the point.
That's the point, I know.
It's not resolved. Yeah.
So most of us could be going along the line of being a mushrik.
Well,
I mean, the way you explained 1/5 and 3/5. Another question comes: if a person is not mentally sound and committed suicide, where does that person stand?
I mean,
Because you said the depth.
yeah, this
By God.
discussion opens a kind of worms.
Yes.
Absolutely. But it's important that we realize how limited we are, that even this simple thing about my own actions, I don't really understand how it happens. We know we cannot say that we do it alongside Allah. As Imam Ali already mentioned that's shirk. We cannot say that we do it independent of Allah, that we're claiming some sort of lordship or share in His kingdom and ownership of His kingdom, which He said His ownership is absolute and unrestricted. So it's something else. So as long as we know what we cannot believe, that brings us somewhere at least. Don't ask me to answer the question. I'm telling you, the whole point of this discussion was that we can't answer, we haven't answered the question.
Question from Brother said?
As we said, even our great scholars in Najaf and in Qom and the great Muslim theologians of this time have failed to adequately answer the question. And that's not some criticism of them. That's testimony to the greatness of Allah and His being.
There are verses or narrations which tend to give the humane and the soothing and healing answer to us mortals, like that we, I don't remember the exact verse or text, but it goes along the lines of, you've been asked to do simple things, get on with them and do them, and you know, ask for God's mercy, etc. If you remember, then it might help to put a nice end to this rather. Yeah.
We have some answers from the Imam alayhi salam, perhaps satisfied the questioner at that time, but doesn't certainly satisfy the questions which are coming up now. Obviously, our Imam is in Ghaiba, so not accessible for that answer. But for example, we have one alleged narration, whether it's authentic or not has to be again investigated. For example, one man came to our Imam Reza alayhi salam, 8th Holy Imam, and asked, how is it that I perform, and is it Allah who has power? So Imam asked him to stand on, I'm sure all of us have, most of us probably heard it, Imam asked him to stand on one leg, and he said, are you able? He said, I am able. He said, now stand, raise the other leg and stand. He said, are you able? He said, I'm not able. So this made the man understand somehow the power of Allah and his own will. However, the question we have here is more intricate, and that's when the man raised his first leg. That's the question. Was it Allah who created that fi'l, that action, or was it he independently raised his leg? So that the answers that time probably satisfy the intellects then. And obviously, intellects of humanity develop, and we pray for the hasty reappearance of our Imam, Ajallahu Ta'ala Faraja, that he might also answer these mysteries for us. But until then, obviously, we have a responsibility to have some understanding of Allah. We already discussed why. That when we worship, that when we do this, who am I worshipping? What am I worshipping? Someone who is just or unjust? I have to know. Or someone who is all-powerful, or he has limited power? I have to know. And or if I don't know, I have to resign my will that this is something that I am so feeble that Allah has created me, so great has created me in this limited way. I have to be humble in front of Him and, yeah, as you said, get on with it, basically.
Shaykh Muhammed Reza Tajri used to give sermons which are quite touching and made many people much more interacting with these worshipping acts, everything together. So one of his sermons or speeches, he said, if you give an employee, a man, a poor man, some money to work in the marketplace, and after a while this man, his business flourishes and he starts disobeying you and claim the original person who gave him the money would say to him, just remember, I initiated you, I gave you, without me you would have been nothing. So what respected Sayyid, who passed away of course, said, even these simple people in the market understand this issue. What's wrong with you people? So there are ways of making it nearer to our moral compass. At the end of the day, we know quite well that we are doing things and we know what's wrong and what's right. And that should be emphasized, and because at the end of the day, these great shepherds try to make people go in the right way rather than go astray. And there have been many attempts. So I think it's, I don't want to say incorrect, to make the discussion go and end up with a gloomy, mysterious way. That's not how the Imams and their disciples have been treating humanity.
We have many lectures. Obviously, we had only less than 45 minutes today to discuss it. There are lectures to the nth term discussing this issue. The point is, even after all these lectures from the Imamiyya school, after all these great scholars have researched the hadith from the Imam alayhi salam, have been unable to come up with a conclusion, a satisfactory conclusion for this, if you like, mystery. Even the way to explain it, as Samahat said, Shirazi may have attempted to, the nature of analogy and make this analogy that it could be made as a similitude, is that analogies are obviously imperfect because they don't represent the thing entirely. Even this person who lent or gave someone money to start up his own business, obviously doesn't match completely with our situation or the situation we have with Allah, obviously, because Allah gave us everything. Once the man gave that man money and his business flourished, the man has no power to stop that person being disobedient or being arrogant, whereas Allah has power over us all the time. So obviously the analogy is good in order to guide a person morally, but imperfect in order for a person to understand Allah theologically, which we may never understand Allah, obviously, to his essence. That's a given. But this particular issue, we should at least realize what is being discussed in the scholarly realm, if you like.
Any more questions from either side?
He just wants us to suffer like they suffer.
Yeah. But I'll ask a question. Going back to the beginning of the talk, we talked about the benefit or the benefit of studying this theology and the fact that you don't want to be worshipping unjust God, so therefore it's important to understand the theological basis of what we're doing. Given that there actually is no answer to this question, and we haven't been able to reach an answer other than saying it's not this and it's not that, what is the benefit of knowing more than that?
For one to say there's not an answer, obviously wouldn't be right, because it exists, right? So there is a reality there. Will we? I'm not saying also that we won't reach the answer. Obviously, mystics, for them, what we discussed right at the end, for themselves have answered the question, even if it doesn't satisfy me or you. So they've answered the question in that wahdatul wujud way, and they understand something from that, and they carry on acting. If they can satisfy themselves, and they're satisfied with that answer, and whatever rebuttal you might give them, they will rebut it with their own proofs, then is it not important that we come to a satisfactory conclusion for me or for yourself and for myself, even though it's subjective, that when you worship Allah, you know who you're worshipping, or what you're worshipping, or why you're worshipping?
Any final questions? Okay, I think we'll end there.